Welcome to CommercialDrones.fm, the podcast that explores the commercial drone industry, the people who power it, and the concepts that drive it. I'm your host, Ian Smith. Hey everybody, and welcome to Commercial Drones FM. Ian Smith here at Drone World Expo in San Jose, California, and I'm sitting down in a very big room with Jesse Kallman, who's the president of Airbus Aerial. So welcome to the podcast, Jesse.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So I've been wanting to have you on the podcast for a long time now, and it actually extends further past Airbus Aerial's creation. So Airbus Aerial is like a relatively new company.
It is, yeah. We started it and announced it back in May.
Okay. So I think that you guys kind of went to Exponential, maybe?
Yep,
that was like your first show.
Everything was announced at Exponential. Dirk Koka, who's the CEO of Airbus Defense and Space, announced it during his keynote presentation there.
Okay, great. So Airbus. I mean, most people know Airbus from riding on their airplanes, but actually I have personal connections to Airbus. My father-in-law works at Airbus Defense and Space, but there's a variety of different, I guess, divisions or business units. I mean, can you tell us like what those are and like how does Airbus Aerial, I mean, it's like kind of obvious. It's aviation and aeronautics and, but how does Airbus Aerial kind of fit into the Airbus equation and what's going on here?
Sure. I mean, Airbus is a massive aerospace company, right? I mean, they're known for the commercial aircraft. They're known for, the A320s and A330s that people fly on when they take airlines across the US or to Europe or wherever. But a lot of people don't know about the rest of Airbus. So Airbus, for example, has one of the world's biggest satellite imaging businesses. They provide imagery to, the likes of Google and lots of other companies out there. But they also build military aircraft. They build satellites. They launch satellites. They're one of the world's biggest helicopter manufacturers, both for, military and commercial uses. They're even doing lots of things around, the future of urban air mobility and personal air vehicles and, autonomous personal transport. So they've got lots and lots of things going on. So, obviously a European organization started by governments based in France and Germany. And, it's really coming together of lots of different European entities, over the last several decades to form, this large aerospace company. But as far as Airbus Aerial, so Airbus Aerial sort of sits somewhat outside of Airbus. We sort of set it up a little bit to run more like a true startup where we kind of are free from a lot of the burdensome process that you would expect with a large aerospace company, when it comes to legal and procurement and IT systems and things like that, where, we manage our own IT. We sort of can operate and build products as we want and address markets as we need and see fit. So we sort of operate as a separate entity to Airbus because we're really focused on the commercial market, wanting to build things very quickly, very efficiently, and respond to a market quickly. And, typically a large company isn't able to do that very efficiently.
That's very true. So we actually didn't even mention, a lot of people might not know, like, what is Airbus Aerial? What do you guys do?
Sure. So the really basic explanation of what we're doing is we're bringing, so I mentioned that, Airbus is one of the world's biggest satellite imagery providers. And when I started talking with Airbus, they said, we really want to be in the commercial drone world. We're trying to understand how we should do that. And what I said was, what drones are really good at is providing information via sensors on board the aircraft. And that's their core purpose today. And that's what a lot of people really use them for. Airbus already has one of the world's biggest data businesses providing satellite imagery. Why can't we bring the two things together to let major commercial organizations who are trying to get insight over, the power lines across an entire state or whether it's an insurance company responding to a hurricane, they need to be able to go to one global player who can help them solve the problem, whether they need satellite data, drone data, manned aircraft data, high altitude aircraft. The data source shouldn't matter. It should be about how do you bring all these different layers together within one tool so that you can then provide analytics and other things on top of it, but that they're not having to go and source all of these different sources of information from 50 different companies and 50 different parts of the world.
Very intriguing. So let's go way, way back and tell us a little bit about yourself. I kind of did a switcheroo here. So we talked about a lot of things out of order,
sure.
But you've been in aviation for quite a long time. You actually worked for companies now, I'm like, oh, so you're a drone company? They're like, no, we are not a drone company. We are a data company. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to say drone startup called Airware. You used to work at one or at that specific company. But just tell us about your background and, how did you get into drones and aviation and aerospace? Kind of what ultimately led you up to Airbus Aerial and being the president there.
Sure. So, I've been in unmanned systems and aviation, since essentially, well, actually all the way back to high school. I got into it starting flying small Cessnas in the Civil Air Patrol in high school. And that's how I started, flying and really getting interested in aviation, and then wanted to get into engineering. Went to Georgia Tech for undergrad and my master's. And as an undergrad student, I started doing a lot of research on UAV design and aerodynamic design. Was managing a wind tunnel for Georgia Tech Research Institute. They have a bunch of facilities up at Dobbins Air Force Base in Atlanta. So I was doing all of the aerodynamic testing we were doing race boats, bullets, but a lot of UAV.
Bullets from guns.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
We were doing guided munitions for the Army for a while. So we were designing small mechanisms so that you could turn bullets in flight or, turn, mortars and things like that. So pretty interesting aerodynamic research. But what I spent a lot of my time on was airfoil design and aircraft design for small UAVs for the Air Force.
What type? All type?
No, small hand launchable items. We were doing circulation control. So we were, for example, blowing air over the wings to reduce induced drag so that it could increase endurance of the aircraft. So we're doing a lot of really interesting things around, how do we take this small hand launchable aircraft and double the endurance from 1 hour to 2, things like that. So that's how I really got started on the technical side of things. And then as a grad student at Georgia Tech, I took over a lot of the FAA's research they had going on around NextGen, which is the Next-Gen Air Traffic Management System.
And when is that supposed to be released?
Well, that's been in discussion for probably over a decade and a half now. 2020 was supposed to be the final implementation of a lot of the Next-Gen programs, but I'm sure it's pushed out well beyond that. But yeah, while I was a master's student, we were doing a lot of research on how do you put drones within the Next-Gen system. We're also doing a variety of other research programs at Georgia Tech. And then when I left Georgia Tech, actually went to work at the FAA directly. Was working as a consultant, worked for the FAA, Department of Defense, mainly on how to integrate UAS into this new aviation system that they were architecting and designing. It was a great experience, but working for the federal government sometimes has its drawbacks. So it's a very challenging environment to be in when you're fresh out of school and you want to really make a difference. So, I'd been talking with a couple friends I knew from Georgia Tech, and they said, hey, they were all working at Boeing at the time, and they were leaving Boeing, and they said, hey, we're going to go and start this company called Airware. It was called Unmanned Innovation at the time, but hey, we're going to start this company Airware, and we're going to build autopilots and help automate small commercial UAVs. And, I at first, wasn't sure and didn't know what I wanted to do. And then after, the company started getting a little bit of traction, I reached back out to some of those friends from Georgia Tech, and they said, yeah, absolutely. And quit my job working at the FAA, moved across the country to Newport Beach. And that's where Airware got started. And, that's how the Airware journey began for the last 4 years or so, which was a great experience. They had an excellent team there, and I really enjoyed my time.
Was one of those friends Buddy Machini?
No, it was a guy I knew from Georgia Tech, Robert Ussery. He was one of the first employees of Airware. He was a hardware engineer, electrical engineer by trade. And so I'd known him for quite a while, and he had kind of shared, what they were doing, and that's what sort of piqued my interest. And then that's how I got to know the rest of the team. So he had sort of introduced me. And
shout out to Buddy. He works at Airware. He's a previous podcast guest. If you have not listened to the podcast, I don't know how many episodes ago it was, but Buddy from Airware, the CTO, was a guest on the podcast. And so how did you transition from Airware to Airbus Aerial and kind of starting this? Like, was this like, an easy decision, or was it, really tough decision?
Yeah, it was definitely a tough decision.
Of course,
joining an early stage startup like that and watching it grow from, just a few people all the way up to, when I left, it was over 100 people. Watching that is, it's pretty amazing experience. And, it's hard to leave that. But, while I was there, I started talking with, some people at Airbus and, just casually, and they had mentioned their interest in the commercial AV space. And I said, hey, wouldn't it be great if you guys, started a business like X, right? X meaning, what became Airbus Aerial. But, I said, you guys have such a great satellite imaging capability, and you're so well known amongst regulators and the aviation industry. You guys really do have some opportunities, but building drones is not, I wouldn't say building small drones is really not where the opportunity lies for them. So I think the executives, and specifically Dirk, who is the new CEO of the defense business at the time, really agreed with that and said, we can't always focus on hardware. There's new sorts of ways to make money and new sorts of ways to conduct business out there, and saw the opportunity on the data side of things. And that's where he really wants to take a lot of what Airbus is doing and be able to monetize the things they've been doing in different ways. So I think we sort of meshed, and we got to talking, and things became more concrete. And they said, well, we really like this idea. Would you come do it for us? And I said, think about it. And we started talking about where we would do it and what specifically we would do. And I've been interested in moving back to the East Coast. So we, after much debate, we settled on Atlanta, and we decided to start the business there.
Nice. It's always cool to get the backstory of kind of like how these companies get created. I mean, a lot of people that listen to the podcast, entrepreneurial or have their own companies, or, just interested in the backstory too. So going back to present day today, now at Drone World Expo, did you have a presentation here, or you were actually on the opening panel keynote hosted by Gretchen?
Yep.
Gretchen West. And so maybe can you give me a little bit of an idea, and the listeners that might not have been able to make it, like what were some of the themes from the panel? I mean, what were you guys talking about, and how did that go?
Yeah, the panel was about what are some of the future trends we see coming, maybe not in the next year or two, but maybe in the next 5 or 10 years. What will be some of the big changes and new technologies that may, people may not be thinking about today. So, I was talking a little bit about some of the really high altitude solar powered aircraft technologies that Airbus is looking to bring here to the US and other parts of the world the next couple of years, something like the Zephyr program at Airbus, something where, Airbus Aerial would take an aircraft like that and operate as a service for customers. That's not, that provides a whole nother level of capability. That's essentially a satellite you can move wherever you want. You can get ultra high resolution imagery. You can put communications payloads on it and provide connectivity to people after a hurricane, or help the Department of Interior track fires. And there's pretty much no limit on what you can do with something like that. So
is that aircraft already actively deployed, the Zephyr?
Yeah, I mean it's being used by some government customers, but as far as in the U.S., it's not deployed in the U.S. But we'll be looking to bring that to the U.S. in the next year or so. So
nice.
That's one of the topics. But I mean, in general, we were talking about there was a representative from Facebook there talking about some of the work that Facebook is doing, obviously with high altitude aircraft. Representative from Google X, someone from GE, and PK from NASA, just talking about where they see things going from their business standpoint. So obviously X talking about some of the delivery work they were doing and where they see that going. And so just in general, it was from more of the larger companies, where do they see in general drone technologies going? And the other point I was making is that I think if the industry is going to be successful, what it will look like in a few years is that they'll just become part of daily life, right? I mean, I think that's when you can check the box that people have actually, or the industry's actually made it, is that it's no longer this crazy new thing. It's just something like, yeah, drones, yeah, okay, sure. I think that was the other sort of, hopefully where we are in the next 5 or so years.
Yeah, and I actually just prior to you, I interviewed Anil Nanduri from Intel, and he was just kind of, that's, from what I understood, a little bit of the goal with the entertainment drones, the Intel Shooting Star drones that fly, with the light shows, to kind of like make drones, very easy and entertaining for people, just to be like, oh yeah, drones are here, they're cool, they're great, nice, normal, no problem.
Yep.
So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. That's definitely a key driver, or key kind of indicator for the industry's health as we move forward here. And so going back to the Zephyr thing, so do you think, would that be potentially Airbus Aerial that would operate or or offer services from the Zephyr maybe, and then that would be like another data source that you guys are delivering to your clients.
Yeah, I mean, our whole concept is it shouldn't matter where the data comes from to the end customer. If you're an insurance company and a hurricane wipes out, Houston, for example, do you care that it came from a satellite or a Zephyr or a DJI Inspire? As long as it answers the question for you, who cares, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, our Airbus Aerial is not going to manufacture the Zephyr, right? That's a program within Airbus Defense and Space. What we do is we take whatever the right asset is for a given job and allow customers easy access to it. So, we would be the ones operating the Zephyr and essentially, leasing out bandwidth or providing bandwidth on whatever connectivity payloads are on the aircraft. Or if there's imaging payload on the aircraft, being able to image areas just like we would with a, small fixed wing drone, except it can sit up there for 3 months and provide connectivity until they can build all the cell towers again.
And are you guys actively already, I know it's still fairly early days, it's been, oh my God, I'm so bad at counting months. 6 months?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That was pretty good.
Yeah. It's very recent. I mean, this whole business was actually only really a PowerPoint slide in April of this year. And we sort of went live with it in May. And, at this point, we already have a product in customers' hands with contracts in place, and we're already growing the team pretty aggressively.
Nice.
So yeah, things have moving pretty quickly and pretty well.
And now, a quick word from our sponsors. Yeah, there are a lot of drone conferences to choose from. You already knew that. But there is one that has the potential to be quite a bit different than the others, and that is DJI's Airworks conference. Put on by the drone manufacturing behemoth themselves, DJI Airworks is taking place in Denver, Colorado on November 7th through the 9th. If you're interested in learning more, go to enterprise.dji.com/airworks, and to snag your special discount code, just shoot me an email at ian@commercialdrones.fm. Commercial Drones FM is supported by Deveron UAS. Deveron UAS is building a standardized drone network for farmers all across North America, offering on-demand, near real-time field-level data when you want it. To learn more about how you can achieve scalable data collection in agriculture, visit deveronuas.com. That's deveronuas.com. Okay, back to the show. Can you give any, if you're liable to, can you give any examples of types, like a specific use case or something that you're working on a client with? We don't need any names or anything like that, but like a specific type of mission that Airbus Aerial might provide. If someone's listening, maybe they need to enlist your services, and maybe like what kind of customers are you looking for? Like who are you targeting with Airbus Aerial? Is it like, the layman who just needs, a construction site survey? Or is it like, much larger organizations?
Yeah, we're looking for larger organizations that have a very large asset base that they tend to have to survey or inspect on a somewhat regular basis. So for example, things that are already, up on our website. So we've done some trials with, big major utilities like Southern Company in Georgia, for example, where today, they use trucks, people, helicopters to inspect power lines. A great example of what we do is instead of just saying, hey, we're going to go fly drones on your power line, what we said was, why don't we survey all of your power lines from satellites across the entire southern part of Georgia, right? Something that, for them to do with people would have been enormously costly and taken quite a long time. We're able to do it in a matter of a day, very simply and at a relatively low cost.
With satellite imagery.
Yeah. Satellite imagery is not as expensive as people may think.
Can you give an example? Or?
It's hard to say because there's different constellations and, tasking rates and things like that, right? So whether it's like a hurricane situation and like I need the data right now, or you can get it sometime in the next week, for example, that changes it quite a lot. But, we were able to image the entire southern part of the state in one go and run some vegetation encroachment analysis and say, all right, at a high level, we think, 80% of your lines are fine. You don't need to go inspect them. These 20%, we found some issues. The satellite data, the resolution isn't high enough to know exactly what's going on. And a lot of times you can spot major issues. You're not going to spot, defective insulators or, small tree encroachment, but you'll spot some macro trends. And so what we do is we use the satellites as sort of like the first tier to really understand what's going on. And then what we did was the next phase is then drones. So we said, all right, now we'll take drones and fly beyond line of sight in those corridors where we did find and identify issues. And so now you've got the satellite telling you the 80% that's fine and rules that out and saves you quite a bit of money from inspecting that on foot or with a helicopter. And then we use the drone on that other 20%, and which can tell you exactly what is going on. So maybe we found, another 10% that is actually fine, and the satellite just picked something up. And then we found another 10% that, there are actual issues, and we have enough resolution and information on it now that tell you exactly what to do about it. So that's an example of how we bring together drones and satellites into sort of one common package. All of that imagery, all of that analysis was put into a cloud platform that we've already developed that does all of the data fusion, overlay, analysis, and processing on the back end. Directly ties into the satellite tasking system. So it's all sort of a seamless process for the customer. They don't have to worry about which satellite or what resolution or any of those sorts of things. They just say, I want to know what's happening with power lines. And I'm worried about vegetation, and I'm worried across this part of the state. And that's all they have to do. So that's sort of a great use case for how we bring these different layers together.
Nice. And so do you guys have planned, so it sounds like you've developed software already, the cloud platform for kind of the delivery and the analysis. Are you guys doing, I'm imagining the answer to the question is yes, but you mentioned vegetation encroachment. If you get a ton of satellite data, it's nearly impossible for a human to look through it all. So I'm imagining you're employing types of algorithms and machine learning and analysis and these kinds of things to kind of automate this process. And are you guys looking to develop your own and kind of push that forward as you find different use cases and problems to solve?
Yeah, we pull in great analytical tools from Airbus, from partners. We can develop things internally. Our same with our philosophy towards the aircraft, right? We're not manufacturing an aircraft. We'll use whatever the right one is for the job. Same goes with analytics. If it's an Airbus tool or if it's something developed in the market, if it adds value to what the customer needs, then that's what we'll use. So the vegetation encroachment analytical model was actually something we pulled from internal to Airbus that's used, for example, today in the UK by Network Rail there to inspect all their rail lines. But the software holds true for power lines or anything else. So we're able to use the same software and run it on the power line data. But we do that with lots of other tools within Airbus for different markets. We can repurpose things, and or we work with small startups or major corporations that have tools that we can incorporate on the data.
Nice. That's cool. And so, developing any hardware at the moment, or is that just up to, just leaving it to whatever the job calls for? If you guys have to, you'll do it.
Yeah. If there's a major contract and, it says, hey, we must collect X data and it requires this sensor, and we have to, we need it in this way. And we say, okay, there's no available aircraft on the market. And it sounds like, in order to do this work, there's enough value here. We need to make an aircraft for it. We can do that. We prefer not to, but for the most part, we just use whatever is available off the shelf, whether it's an Airbus aircraft or not.
That's awesome. So what can we look forward to? As time goes on, maybe the next 5-10 years, what is on that PowerPoint slide? What was the last bullet, this is where we want to be in 5 or 10 years if everything goes well. And this is, successful business and profitable, or just generating enough revenue to justify itself. What can the drone industry maybe look forward to, or those who could potentially be your clients look forward to from Airbus Aerial?
Yeah, it's just additional layers of services built within the same system. So we talked about the Zephyrs for one, right? In a couple of years, we hope that that's an active tool in our system where someone can just say, this is, AT&T or Verizon can log into a system and say, our towers are down on this, and we can just move the Zephyr into place, and we may have, 4 or 5 over the United States, and that may provide us enough coverage, and we can just kind of move them around as needed to provide either imagery or connectivity. So, I think longer term, that's one of the areas where we see a lot of value. It's just more layers to be provided within the same thing. So where we're primarily using small UAS, so things under 55 pounds, we want to be able to expand into other envelopes like high altitude aircraft, larger aircraft that can fly much longer endurance missions. And then even there's other programs within Airbus for things like cargo delivery, and they're trialing some things in Singapore right now where they're ferrying equipment and items off of ships onto shore and then around Singapore itself. So in the future maybe there'll be the ability to move physical items and things like that. But again, that's all sort of future state. Today it's really about imagery and analytics on certain areas. And I think if we're going to be successful in the next few years, we would hope that most of these major oil and gas and utility and insurance, and we're working with a lot of governments themselves, state governments, federal governments, and a lot of international governments as well, where they have their own sort of remote sensing needs. We hope that we're the one place that they turn to say we need more information on what's happening in our in this forest in this part of the country, and same concept of multi-layered data collection and analysis to solve whatever the problem is. Nice.
Wow. So that's very, very cool. So yeah, I knew about the whole, satellite part of Airbus of just regular Airbus defense and space. But merging the two, it's a no-brainer. Like merging those data sets is excellent. So actually, I didn't ask what kind of resolution, what's the max resolution you guys have access to of a given area?
On a satellite?
Yeah, from a satellite.
Right now, the best resolution we get off an Airbus satellite is about 50 centimeters.
Oh, so half a meter. That's really nice. Okay.
Yeah. With that, just to give you a reference, so in the work we were doing for the hurricane, for Hurricane Harvey in Texas, half a meter, 50 centimeter resolution will tell you if a house is total or not, or if you have, pretty serious damage. You can see that from the satellite photo. So, where the insurance companies find a lot of value is they can just very quickly and easily rule out total loss.
Yeah.
They can say, all right, these, if they've got 100 insureds in a given area, these 50 are clear and obvious total losses. I don't even have to send people out. I can process the claim right now.
Wow.
There's a ton of value just in that alone.
That's huge. Yeah. It's taking going from macro all the way down to micro.
Yeah. So, going all the way down to most of the drone data we were using is anywhere on the order of, 1 to 3 centimeters, right? And with that, obviously you're looking at, very, very extreme detail on neighborhoods and things like that.
Wow. Very cool, man. So are you guys looking, you said you're a growing team. Are you guys hiring people? Or you want to get the word out? There's people listening. Maybe people are interested to join. What kind of, so another thing is, a lot of listeners are looking to either get into the industry or try to maybe start a career. So what kind of roles does Airbus Aerial, it's a big brand behind you guys. What kind of roles do you guys hire for?
Yeah, right now we've grown our team pretty quickly, and we're still hiring. I would say the vast majority of our team are software development and geospatial backgrounds, because that's really at the core of what we're doing. So I would say that's the majority of our team. We also have flight operations expertise, drone and manned. So people that have been working on drone flight operations or being drone pilots themselves. We hire quite a bit of those folks as well to either provide services directly or manage a lot of our partners that we work with to provide flight services. So those are, I would say, some of the key roles. I think we're gonna, outside of that, obviously we have account management, sales, business development type roles, internal support type functions, and the general business items like marketing and finance and things like that. But
so basically everything. If you want to get in the drone industry, because I have people that ask this sometimes, there's not just drone, you don't have to be a software developer. There's regular marketing departments and business development and things like that. So where can people go to learn more about that? What is your website?
Yeah, it's just airbusaerial.com.
That's easy.
Simple enough.
I don't need to spell that.
Yeah.
Well, very cool. You guys are definitely really kind of blurring the lines between me being able to call you a drone company, because I just can't anymore. You're definitely not. It's just like an aerial kind of data services company, and then maybe you eventually move on from and add in more data, not just
it's funny.
aerial.
That's where the name came from, right? I would say it took months to come up with a name.
Can you please give us one of the names that you didn't choose?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember. So Airbus also uses naming agencies for a lot of this stuff, and we had to throw most of those in the garbage that were not very useful. I mean, there was tons and tons of names thrown at this, and honestly, I can't even remember at this point. But yeah, I mean, we said, all right, well, what do we actually do? And I think you said it. We're not really a drone company. I mean, one of the original names they had was, they had drone in the name, and we're like, well,
Airbus drones.
It's not really a drone company, right? I mean, we're doing all these other things, so it's really about aerial data services. And then we threw out, Airbus Aerial Services and things like that. We're like, well, how about just Airbus Aerial, because that's kind of close enough. And after much debating, that's just kind of where it stuck.
Well, it has a nice ring to it. I appreciate the alliteration on it. And I think you guys are going to be very successful. I think this has been tried before, of course, but not. Airbus, as you mentioned, has a very unique advantage when it comes to just aerial data that already exists, and then kind of making the mission just using whatever you need to get the job done. Just opens up a ton of possibilities rather than just pigeonholing yourself into drones. So very cool. Jesse Kallman, thank you so much for joining us. You can go ahead and follow Jesse on Twitter at jkallman. That's JKALLMAN 85. jkallman 85. And you can follow Airbus Aerial at Airbus Aerial on Twitter as well. While you're at it, you can follow the podcast at Drones Podcast, and then hit us up on Facebook.com/Drones Podcast. You can donate on Patreon.com/Drones Podcast if you want to support the show. Just $1 a month helps a ton and gets you access to a private Facebook group, which Jesse will be invited to, as are all previous podcast guests. And if he wants to join, he can, but he doesn't have to. And if he does, he'll be there to chat with you guys about cool commercial drone stuff. So, Jesse, any last parting thoughts or words of wisdom, something that helped you, or tell me your favorite drone of all time, or give me something just to end this show on?
No, I mean, I would just say, this has been a pretty interesting experience for me, just the last few months of going from the startup world into a hybrid startup, big company world. And I'd say it's been a pretty interesting experience. So for anyone that's, listening and considering, do I start my own business? Do I go to a startup? Do I do a big company? I would say, why not try them all, right?
Great advice. Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jesse, for joining us. And we're going to go ahead and cut off the mics. Cheers, everybody. I'm giddy with excitement to share that I'll be hosting the first official Commercial Drones FM event in San Francisco on November 16th. This inaugural meetup will start off with a panel moderated by me with guests from DJI, Altascope, and Drone Deploy, and it will start and end with plenty of networking. We're going to discuss opportunities, challenges, and the future of the drone industry. Space is quite limited, so please go RSVP now at commercialdrones.fm/event. Seriously, go RSVP. It's going to be a great event. That's November 16th in San Francisco, and you can RSVP at commercialdrones.fm/event. Hope to see you there.